Okay, it is 6 o'clock and we will call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everybody. This is the Truth and Taxation meeting. If you have specific questions about the value of your property, the assessors are down the hall and they'd be more than willing to talk about that. This meeting is about our budget. We'll present our budget and take any comments after that and go home. So anyway, we're looking for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda as printed. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll move right to the presentation of the budget, and David Menke, our administrator, will walk us through that.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Menke. I'm the county administrator, and I have to stand right here so I'm close enough to the microphone. So I'll forget that once in a while and pop back here. We have some slides that provide an overview of the budget. Starts out very large, looking at the entire county budget, countywide, and then drills down into the individual funds. And I think we could take questions during the presentation if that maybe is helpful. And so if you have a question on a particular slide, I can try to address it. And we also have Kelly Schroeder, the county auditor treasurer, here as well to answer some questions. So with that, we'll get started.
Just remember, this is not the meeting where we're going to change the value on your property. This is a meeting that we talk about why we have a budget like we have that we're presenting. So the meeting to talk about the property value is in the spring, but our assessors are down the hall to talk to you about that if you wish.
All right, so we'll start with the overall property tax levy. And if you look at the very bottom of this slide, there's a $21,272,255 amount. That is the proposed 2023 property tax levy. That is $619,580 more than the levy in 2022, or a 3% increase. And so going up the slides, you can see there are 9 funds that get levy dollars. 3 of them, the ones with the zeros, are getting in that change from 2022 column. Those 3 funds are getting the exact same amount of levy dollars for 2023 as they did for 2022. The bottom line, the election equipment line, is getting $50,000 less. The commissioners would remember we purchased a bunch of voting tabulators, et cetera. And so we can lower that levy for 2023. The funds up at the top, the revenue or the general fund is getting the most increase at $422,000, and Health and Human Services is getting $233,000 more. And you can see those percentages in the right-hand column. We have 3 bond funds that show up kind of in the middle portion, and those are all getting slight increases, and those levies amounts are driven by the bond documents. And we have a slide on the bonds later on that'll go into a little more detail. So this slide compares 2022 expenditures to 2023. And so if you look in the change column, that, you know, it calculates how much there's an increase or a decrease. And again, starting at the bottom in that 2023 expenditure column, the total proposed county budget for 2023 is $54,467,472. That is an increase of $3.8 million over 2022. And so You can see that there are two more funds on this page than there were the last one. There's two funds that don't get any levy money that we still budget for. And it's the fourth and fifth ones down the list, the COVID-19 Relief Fund and the Land Management Fund. But this just shows you the magnitude of the various funds in the county. If we break all of that.
I'll wait till
Oh.
it's finished, I'm sorry. Thought you were taking a breath and was waiting for me to say something.
Oh, no, is it relevant to the last slide or?
Both of these. Okay, so my question is, Health and Human Services, you got the levy is over 4 million, and then the expenditure down here is 12 million. Where is the 8 million coming from?
We'll get to that in a little bit. Yep.
Okay, all right.
Good
And
question.
that stops me for the rest of the question.
You made my day because that's an important piece is the levy is a portion of the whole budget.
Thank you.
I think, Jim, if you back up to the fact that our levy is about 21 million.
Yep.
And our budget is 54 million. Through this process, you'll see where those other funds come from.
Thank you.
And they come from outside sources like for our road and bridge and health and human services.
Thank you.
So this slide just shows where does the money go? So 32% of it, the biggest chunk goes to highway, roads and bridges. The next biggest chunk goes to public safety. That's the sheriff's office, that's the jail, that's probation, that's courts. The next biggest portion is health and human services. General government is kind of when you look down the hall and you see all those offices, that's general government. I'm general government. These folks up front are general government. And then you can see the decreasing amounts for debt service and land management. And if we slice the pie another way and we look at the objects we spend money on, salaries and benefits, far and away the most expensive thing that we have. In the 2023 budget, there is one new position budgeted. That is a sheriff's deputy. That's about an $88,000 cost. Services and charges, you see, I started to wander away from the mic. Services and charges, you see is a big increase from 2022 to 2023. That's driven by highway spending. So highway road projects and bridge projects are services in this category. So when you look at all of the spending we do, 80% of it is on these bullets on this page. So salaries and benefits, road and bridge construction, debt, out-of-home placements, vehicle replacement, medical services to prisoners, and the library appropriation. So if you add all of that up, that's 80% of the money that we spend. This slide shows each fund and then what we're budgeting for revenue and what we're budgeting for expenditures in total, and then the net. If there's a negative in that net column, it means we have planned spending of reserves. If there's a zero in that column, it means the budget perfectly balances. And if you look at the general fund on the top line, you'll see there's a $65,000. That is the contingency in the general fund. In the bond funds, they have a little bit of a positive balance, and that's just required by the bond documents that we have to levy more than the actual bond payments. So, and then at the bottom, it just shows the total revenue and total expenditures countywide. So this is the levy versus the budget, and this is a little bit of the discussion we had started, where the amount of the levy is a portion of the various funds. And so in the general fund, it's 59%, health and human services, 34%. And I'm not going to read the whole slide, but I'll just leave it up there for a minute, because you can see some of the funds, like I had mentioned, COVID relief and land get zero levy money. And some of the funds get a lot of levy money. So the non-levy money that goes into the general fund, these are the largest sources of that non-levy money in the general fund. And so county program aid, almost $2 million, and that's a decrease of about $97,000 from 2022. And there's a slide at the end that'll show that as well. Police contracts, so our sheriff's office contracts with the cities to provide police protection. Payment in lieu of taxes, that's state money that's paid on tax forfeited land and state-owned land. The tax forfeited land and timber sales is revenue from the sale of timber or tax forfeited land. Police aid is just it's a general aid that's based on the number of post-licensed deputies we have. The solid waste fee, that's that $10 fee that shows up as a special assessment on your property taxes. Then there's penalties and interest that if you're late on your taxes that get collected. Probation aid underwrites some of the cost of probation. We contract with some townships for assessor services. And then the recorder fees every time you record a document. And I know commissioners, you're familiar with the compliance fee and the recorder technology fee. Those are different than this fee. This is the one that just goes into the general fund. So these are the main non-property tax sources of revenue that make that general fund. So it's about 59% levy. And then these are the other portion. This just drills down a little bit into the general fund again, where you see the total expenditures. They're going up about $1 million or 5.5%. There's that contingency that showed up. And part of the way we balanced the budget this year was to use some of the ARPA money as a one-time transfer. And then just, you can see that the levy portion of the general fund actually decreased about 1% from year to year. So there's a little less levy and a little more non-levy as a percent of the total. These are the major departments in the general fund. So if you start in the top left, the sheriff is the largest. You can, they just decrease in amount, but you can see where most of the money is spent. Sheriff, jail, attorney, probation, information technology. These are some workload measures, just to give an idea of the types of activity that happen in the zoning office and the auditor treasurer office. If you go down nearly to the bottom, you see the absentee mail ballot count. We had no elections in 2021, so that shows up as a 0. We had several special elections in 2019. And the assessor recorder's office, just some of the work that they do. So that top one are properties that they actually go out and physically reappraise. It's a 5th every year. And the birth certificates of the marriage license and death certificates, those are not individual deaths or births or marriages. Those are issuances of copies, if you were wondering how those totals could be what they are. Some stats on the jail, and it's the second most expensive department in the county. And in the middle of the slide, you can see the average daily population and how that has decreased. And COVID had a significant impact on the jail operations. And you can see that cost per inmate per day has gone up quite a bit over the years, primarily due to lower inmate numbers. And in the bottom half of the slide, you can see we have open positions. So if you do know anyone looking for a job, the jail is actively recruiting. Health and Human Services. So the total expenditures are increasing $10,888. The levy is increasing about $233,000. So this fund, and you can see the percentage is 32% versus 34%. The percentage paid by the levy is increasing because some of the state shared revenues are decreasing. And these are just some workload measures in Health and Human Services, child protection reports, children's mental health, and parent support outreach referrals, and adult protection, And the adult protective services, those are vulnerable adults. Highway has a significant increase in expense, zero levy increase. And these are projects that are state aid funded projects. And so they're not a levy piece. And we also do have a local sales and use tax to pay for local roads. And so if you see the county roads that are the 3-digit numbers, those are local county roads that don't get any state funding, and they're funded out of the local option sales and use tax. So here's the 3 bonds that the county has. And there's the 2023 payment column, so a total of $2.4 million in debt service. And my favorite column is the payoff year. In reality, that's only 8 budget years to get to 2031. So
We're almost there.
just a snapshot of the fund balances. We do budgets on an annual basis, but we do have a fund balance in the general fund. It's $7 million. Of that, 5.1 million is unassigned. The assigned fund balance are things, could be attorney forfeitures or some other donations, like for the sheriff's drone program or some of their other programs that money can only be used for those specific purposes. The 5.1 million is unassigned. We have, or the county commissioners have, a policy of having a fund balance of 20 to 35%. And so we are at 25%, kind of right in the middle range of that. And it's proved adequate for our needs. The state auditor will say that local government should have about 50% fund balance. We're a little lower than that, but it hasn't been a problem for us. And so we're not a bank, so we don't need to have money in the bank just for the sake of having it. So I think the commissioners have set a lower target. Health and Human Services has an overall fund balance of $3.2 million. And then there's some restricted funds for the maternal, infant, early childhood home visiting program. And then highway, just under $1 million, and land management. This just recaps the levy, which is what most folks are probably here and interested on. But overall, it's a 3% increase from 2022 to 2023. The calculation of property taxes, I just put a pretty simple, straightforward example where you take whatever your taxable property value is times the class rate to get the tax capacity. So if you have a homestead residential property, and there's like 56 classes of property. So homestead residential is one of those.
I think it went up now.
Did it go? I'm a little
I think
behind.
There's 61.
So in any case, most people here have a home. So I use that as the example. If your home is valued at $100,000, you take it times the class rate of 1% and your tax capacity is $1,000. If you do that for all of the properties in the county, you run that calculation, you get the total tax capacity. And so that's $42 million. You divide that by the levy and you get that tax capacity rate. And then you take that rate times your individual tax capacity. So in our example, if your home is a $100,000 homestead, your tax would be $502. If your home was valued at $200,000, your tax would be $1,004. It'd just be double. So the arithmetic is pretty straightforward. It gets a little complicated in what is your classification of property. And then there are different tiers. So once your homestead hits, is it $500,000? Once it hits $500,000 of value, the value above 500,000 has a class rate of 1.25. I look at Kelly and she mouths the info to me because she's the expert. So the more, if you have a really valuable property, on the higher value, you pay more tax. Any questions on how the calculation is done? So this chart, and in the packet you have, there is an error. And so I got to look on mine to find there are two numbers that did not get corrected. On the left-hand side, where it says percent in value, if you go down to ag and it says 4.8, that 4.8 should really be 24.6.
They're okay on this.
Yeah, we updated
Oh,
the,
okay, okay.
Ryan can do that with a few keystrokes.
Way to go, Ryan.
And then on the apartments, where it says 15.3, that should really be 7.4. So I apologize for that error. But the reason for this slide is, if you look at residential property, overall, residential property increased 23.6%, seasonal property 23.4%, ag 24%, commercial industry only 5.3%, and apartments 7.4%. So then when you do that tax capacity calculation, which is the other side of the spreadsheet, residential properties increased 27%, seasonal 24%, ag 25%, commercial industrial 8.5%, apartments 5.6%. So there is a shift in who pays the levy. So residential properties, seasonal properties, and ag properties are paying more as a percentage of the total tax collected because their values increased faster. Does that kind of make sense? That if you have a commercial industrial property or an apartment, you probably see a tax decrease from 2022 to 2023. A lot of folks who have homes saw a little decrease too, but a lot of people didn't because their value maybe went up more than the average. But I just use this slide to kind of highlight how the value flows into the tax capacity, and then the tax capacity drives how much your individual property pays. Everybody who was awake yesterday saw the headline that the state has a $17.6 billion surplus. And I just want to highlight the state funds a lot of county operations. Counties are entities of the state to do the state's work, right? The state says we need to have human services, we need to have highways, et cetera. From 2022 to 2023, the state actually reduced the amount of money it's giving to the counties, despite the fact that there's historic surpluses. And so that $280,000 before commissioners even get out of the gate on the budget, you have to come up with nearly $300,000. That's almost half of that $600,000 increase in the levy. And so there are some lines of state revenue that increased, highway, for example, but that doesn't flow into the general government operations that can only be used for roads and bridges. So I just use this to show that we really are driven by the state and what they offer or provide as far as funding. And you see that in the total expenditures, the local levy is just a portion of that. And so when the state reduces funding, there's not a lot of other places to look for the money. And that completes the formal presentation.
Jim, I want to go back and point out your question about the difference, the $12 million HHS budget, and we levy 4, where the 8 comes from the state.
Yeah.
If you look on the sheriff's budget, if you add all the sheriff's budget, the jail, county attorney, everything in public safety together, it's close to $9 million. All of that, none of that basically comes from any state aid. That all comes from local levy dollars. So that total $54 million budget, we're really looking at, 21 of that we have to raise locally. And of that 21 that we raise locally, 40% of it goes to public safety before we even start. So.
Thank you.
And Steve, there is no public online. And so
Okay.
it's just the folks in the room, if you want to take comments or questions.
So I'm assuming most of you are here because your tax bill went up. most of you aren't here because your tax bill went down. You're here to say, boy, you guys did a great job, I'm sure. But your tax bill went up because property values of your classification of property went up. That's a function that we have, basically, we have no control over. Because when somebody's if everybody in the neighborhood sells their house for 400,000 and we were all living in a $200,000 house, now all of a sudden my house is going to get a bigger value than it did before, if it's just like all the neighbors' houses. The other caveat to those 61 or 62 classifications of property is if I have ag land and I have a house on my ag land, I pay 0.5% of value. On my house, I pay 1% of value. If I owned Sauser's Hardware and it was valued exactly the same as my house, I would pay 1.5% of value. So it's not just a straightforward 3%. The kind of thing we do a sheet every year when we start working on taxes. Kelly does a sheet for us and says all of us are listed on here and a bunch of people we know. Kevin, I even got you on here, but to see what would happen if we raised taxes 0% all the way to 9%. What impact would that have? And some people get hammered really hard. If you own property on the lake or a river, your values probably went up a tremendous amount. More than I know. I was shocked when I heard what places were selling for. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if it'll level off now. What happens is the assessed value has about a 1.5 year lag in your taxes. Help me, Kelly, if I start getting off track here, but okay. So if property values nosedive,
Already are.
Yeah, it's going to take more than 1.5 years for you to see a decrease in your taxes. I'm just telling you, that's in the value. In the value,
Might not decrease.
your taxes may, depending on your classification of property. But if your house last June was worth 400,000 and now it's worth 300,000, it's not gonna immediately show up on your tax statement next spring that your valuation went from 400 to 300. Did I hit that right? Yeah.
So just a question maybe.
Yep.
not the right place for it, but with the state surplus, what it is, I mean.
Here-
Pay to the state too, how do we get?
Here-
where we belong?
Here's what I have, if you ask any of our area representatives.
Yeah.
Ask them about Steve Holland's speech.
Yeah.
Because they can recite it better than me, because I tell them, you can't tell me with a straight face as a state legislature that you have a surplus until you have paid us all the things you promised to pay us since the 90s. And I'll use probation as an example. They made a deal with all the counties in the state that they would fund probation officers at 55% of their salary. You know what the rate was last year that they reimbursed us? 28. 26%. And we have how many probation agents?
Yeah, well, there's 10 staff, so 8
Eight agents. That they're missing 30% of that agent's salary. That's a big amount of money. If you add that all together, that's 1%, adds together 1% of our levy. County program aid, we got a decrease this year in a time when they have a surplus of billions of dollars. Because the formula, they refuse to update the formula. Our PILT payments that they pay us for things like Nemadji State Forest and Shangwatana State Forest, they pay us about $1 an acre. $1.50 an acre, something like that. They need to pay us the same amount that I have to pay in taxes. That's what it started out to be. The payment in lieu of taxes. We have to provide services to those areas. They need to make those things whole. If they made those whole, we would not have a levy increase. We'd probably have a decrease. But our costs, of course, our costs have continued to go up. We can't buy squad cars, we can't buy road graders, and we can't buy plow trucks any cheaper than we could 10 years ago. We can't put officers in those squad cars and people driving those trucks cheaper than we used to. So our costs go up.
There is another way, if I can, there is another way of looking at it also, though. I could give you my insight on how I see things. So I guess what I'm hearing is, and I've heard it and I can agree, you're sitting with a big surplus down there. But to sit here and wait for the state to throw us some scraps is one way of looking at it. And I tell you what, we can sit and wait a long time. And if we think that is good, maybe the federal government will throw us something up here, I don't know. But I always try to look at things that are, in our own control, like in my home, what can I do myself to help myself? What can I do that's in my control? And there's other things that we have, it's all about, we take money in taxes to fund everything. There was everything from birth licenses to gun licenses. What's this other page of everything else we take money in on? Fees we take money in on. There's other things. And I'm just looking here at, and again, my other commissioners hear me talk about this a lot, and so does Kelly, and so does others here. I brought it up. The county has other resources. We have an abundance of land that also could be sold. And that monies could be used to fund things. Currently, we're holding on to it for, I think a lot of it is in what's called Memorial Forest. I don't know if anybody's aware of that. Memorial Forest, to me, we compete with other forests like General Andrews Forest, Shangwatana Forest, Nemadji Forest, which is funded by deeper pockets, which comes out of the state. I think there's a way, and there's an example out there. There was this one small piece of land that was sold up by Denham. I'm up in that area. Sold for $10,100 by auction. The county only had a valuation of $1,100 on it, meaning the DNR paid us PILT money. PILT stands for payment in lieu of tax. They only paid us on a value of $1,100. It's sold for over $10,000. And then that's new money. That's new money coming in. I guess we could sit here and wait for the state to throw us something to increase this PILT, to give us part of the 17 billion. But if you follow elections and you see how things go, the majority of who controls this state sits in that 6-county metro area down there. I would believe they're going to take care of things down there before we get something up here. If this land were to be sold, we would have more money coming in. We wouldn't have put the burden onto the property tax. holders, the citizens up here, the people up here. That's just another way of looking at it. We can sit and wait, or we can take other action.
You even need a bill that we can get passed. When you're a senior citizen, they freeze your property taxes. The way things are going, you're on a fixed income, and everything's just going up and up, and you can't survive. You can't even keep your home anymore.
Those are great ideas. And it's something that we have talked, but that you need to talk to your state representative and state senator about those. Because we can't pass those kind of things.
I'm just saying.
Yep. Yep.
In place. This land that you said that could be sold, would it be sold possibly for residential areas?
It could be if,
Because that would just increase the problem that we got right now. The sticker shock on our proposed taxes was 148% increase.
yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, when the property values went up, and that's what they're saying now, they being us, I guess, the property values went up. These property values should have went up also. And you know, it's simple. If you have, let's say you just, I mean, to really simplify, this is how it had to be
I
explained. to me.
think JJ, though, let's stick to the budget talk here.
Right, what I'm doing is just giving like,
Because a lot of that land that we have in Memorial Forest is, we hold that for gravel reserves and for timber reserves.
Mhm.
And so we have people that make a living logging in this area. And so if all those things get broke up into 10-acre chunks and 20-acre chunks, that industry is gonna go away.
and what I'm offering, Mr. Chair, is you gave a pretty good explanation of one side of the coin.
Yep,
giving an
I
explanation
understand that.
of The other side of the
but
coin, just to give equal time of,
Today, we're talking about our budget and how our budget is presented.
and how we could get those numbers down. Quite simply, how it was explained to me, because I'm not that awful bright of a person, but if you only had 4 people paying taxes, property taxes in this county, 4 people, 4 parcels. And then all of a sudden, if you just took 2 of those and turned it into public land, the other 2 pay way more. We have over 49,000 acres of land sitting there.
And we have 33,000 pieces of property that people pay taxes on. So we got more than 2.
And this memorial forest, you know where that came from? That was voted in by the board. But it was a decision to be made to put it into memorial forest. We already have General Andrews Forest, Nemaji Forest, Shangmatana Forest. There's a lot of land out there. And it doesn't have to be split up into 10-acre pieces. I'm sure somebody, even a solar farm would possibly want to buy maybe 160039000. It's attached right underneath the 230,000 volt line. And that's proven to be much more of a moneymaker. When you talk about logging land, they're not figuring in the cost of the land. In business, you have to figure out your cost of goods, which is the value of your building, the value of the land. They got this land for free and they log it off. And then what do you do for 30 years when you're waiting for the trees to grow? That could be in private ownership, paying taxes. That's all I wanted to say about that. And your local representatives and people on the board are a lot closer than the ones down in St. Paul. So if you're gonna say you gotta go down, like your example of social security or being, what was your question again, sir, with? Seniors, yeah, seniors, you know, that decision is made down at St. Paul with, and they deal with every county in the state. I'm talking, like I said, when I first started giving this point here, this is stuff that could be done right up here. These are decisions that could be done right here with a representative, a commissioner that you vote in. That might be your neighbor. That might be right down the street. It doesn't take 5 of us. It takes 3.
Well, it's a concern. Out of their own home because of that. Well, then you're not gonna get any tax anyway. And
Yeah,
then you have more spend.
Right, in the end game would be another tax forfeit parcel possibly. To then put it back in public and then you raise everybody else's taxes. What's the end game?
Yeah, how does it work?
Okay, yeah, let's,
When I was talking to the assessor.
Yep.
Loma Township.
Yep.
He said that the prices have really gone up in Loma Township, and I guess maybe I needed to ask her, but I didn't think of it at the time. So your property, the percentage of tax you pay on the value of your home depends on which township you live in. It's not the same for all over the county.
the percentage is the same.
Yes, so the tax rate is the same. However, when values are set, we break it down and look at different areas because you wouldn't want Pine City influencing how we value your property out in Wilma.
Wilma, Arna, and Ogama values have gone skyrocketing.
Same as a lot of
Happen to live in
places,
one of those townships.
right? Yeah, we see a lot of people buying out there, trying to get away, I think.
And are they buying? Because one of the things that our township has been coming and asking Pine County not to sell the land.
Right.
We're selling our land.
Well, that, and JJ wants to sell more of it, and we've said no.
Because you're selling the land that is belonging to the county and it's just been used for logging or whatever. And you're selling it, is that part of the reason why the values are going up, because you're selling all this extra land?
So those sales are not included in the sales study
Okay.
that we use.
That would be if I came and bought your neighbor's land. And so my sale would be considered a good sale, but yeah, when it's
If you
forfeited
buy
land,
county land, if the county sells land.
it's not an open market.
It's not the first sale.
Not the
Right.
first sale, that's not considered.
Yeah.
That's why I wondered if that was also helping the rate.
And one other thing, since I'm up here at the podium now, that I want to stress, to those who are concerned about their income versus these property taxes, make sure you are checking out the property tax refund. It literally is supposed to be the equalizer between, it looks at what is your income and what is your property taxes. There's a neat little chart. You can go do an estimate pretty fast. A couple years ago, we got statistics from the state. Probably only about 2/3 of the people that qualify based on income actually apply. We're leaving a lot of money on the table. So really check that out because that's a huge saver.
Thanks.
Is there supposed to be a percentage that taxes can go up every year? I mean, isn't there a cap? Is there a cap on that?
There is not.
I remember.
So back in the day, it
We've all
daylight,
changed.
it daylighted in 2012. It limited that your value could only go up by like 10 or 12% a year. However, that was painful come like 2008 because your values were so far behind. And then in 2008, we're still trying to catch up, yet the values have plummeted. And so it really kind of created some inequities at that point. And so it got sunsetted, that program. Honestly, it was very difficult to explain to people of how can you have decreased my actual value, but now my taxable value went up. It was rough.
Values. We have a property on one side of the road that's worth $500,000. One on the other side that's worth $100,000. Service is different, does that $500,000 property get versus the other? What value? How do you justify penalty tax for moving your property?
So every property is looked at based on high land, low land improvements, that type of thing. So yes, the services to essentially every property is exactly the same, but yet you're paying a different amount based on
How do you justify that?
if we have an ad valorem property tax system. And so that was determined by the legislature of that's how it works based on value.
Doesn't work. So great for somebody that improves the property.
Right,
If there's one tenant to improve.
not at all.
Any questions on the budget?
Question, for non-payment of taxes, is it 3 years now or 7 years?
It is 3 years and then it on the board.
How do you justify that too? Let's say your taxes $5,000 a year, and in 3 years' time, you don't pay the county $15,000, but they say your property's worth $500,000. How do you justify throwing somebody out of their home for
Yeah,
15 grand?
repossessing that. Extortion.
State
How is
statute,
that not extortion?
Yes.
How is
state
that not
statute
legal?
allows it, and we have lots of options for people to be able to catch up. And we work with people a lot, but sometimes
Taxes
people,
are unlawful to begin with. We're supposed to be guaranteed food, shelter, and clothing. Shelter should not be taxed, period. Have a system where if somebody has a little nicer place, gets penalized. You wanna come and steal it from them, you know, and then. When you send the sheriff out, if I was sitting on my front porch with my shotgun, is he gonna take me out and find pots? If I refuse to give up my property for $15,000.
It's hard to look at that way, isn't it?
But Craig, it's the system that we have to work with. We have to,
But yes,
we have to supply, we have to have a budget. We're here to talk about the budget, and so our budget needs to provide the services that we feel we need. We need sheriff protection, we need a jail, we need a county attorney, we need our roads, we need the people to issue birth certificates and death certificates. We need that. So we need to garner money to make that happen. And so that's the system we have to collect it. And until the legislature comes up with a better system, it's a system that we're gonna use.
Our legislature is broken if we haven't noticed that.
Well, it's what they've given us, Craig, and we cannot solve that here tonight.
Probably big. Had this conversation, Steve, several times.
Well, so the other thing is that these offices have to do everything by the statutes that are passed down in St. Paul. And so the forfeiture of your home after 3 years of not paying taxes and going on the 4th year, that was all set by statute. We didn't have any say in that. Your property value and your homestead classification goes before you start losing homestead credit, that's all state statute. But I think that if you look at somebody in Wilma Township that has a house worth $150,000 and you've got somebody in Pine City Township that's got the $500,000 house, I don't think that it's fair that the Wilma Township is paying the same amount of tax as you because you get the same services. I just have that's not quite the way that I think it needs to be. But until they change those statutes, that's the way it is going to be.
So, and do any of these concerns get to the people from in St. Paul? Or do you just?
We meet with our legislators several times. We just met with them, what, a week ago?
And we talk to them, but the question is, do you talk to them? Yeah, I bet you do. Yeah, I mean, that's where they need to hear from you guys also.
Big surplus to that right now, state that sure help out. But this college is looking things like this. They want to look at all these schools and everything. I
Well,
wonder how much schools. They're like put it down a rack. When you give them never does anything. There was a
We-
story yesterday in the paper that they wanted some of this money to have a workforce in Minnesota. And that means they're going to be looking at some of these immigrants. The illegal drugs that they have in because they're not looking that they want to do a bunch of their surplus money to.
Well, we can't find enough workers in Pine County right now.
Yeah, we're short.
We're short.
Then maybe back up on that health and human services budget.
You know where most of that money goes?
There's a lot of
To what?
administrating.
Well, that's what the state pays us to do. And when my mom has to go to the assisted living facility, and she's used up all her assets, that's where the money comes from. Or your aunt or my aunt or anybody's aunt, that's where most of the Health and Human Services money goes to. When a child commits a crime and they have to be removed from the home, that's a big part of their budget is out of home placement. When we have to place a child that's a juvenile in a hold facility, it's hundreds of dollars a day.
Because both parents have to work to pay their taxes. I mean, it's a vicious circle, isn't it? You know,
Well, that's where the money goes.
Kind of in this discussion or whatever, everybody's feeling frustrated because everything's costing more, even their taxes.
Yeah.
And everybody's limited in what they can do. And we're putting the pressure on you. You say you're talking to representatives. Are you talking to Nathan and Jason? Or are we talking to some of the other, on the other side of the aisle? Are you, who you speak with to get some value for our county?
We talk to anybody that'll listen to me.
And how's your success rate? Are you having any?
I think
success with?
I think we've been fairly successful. We've gotten some, we have a bill, I'm gonna say it wrong now because I'm looking at Becky, but it started right here. There's a bill in the legislature called the Paperwork Reduction Act, because our Health and Human Services people that we're working on very antiquated software systems, computer systems throughout the state. And you remember the Minlars thing? It was antiquated. That was like grease lightning compared to what our people our child protection agents are working on. They need to update that. They need to take some of that surplus money and update that. So yes, we do have had a bill in the legislature last year to help with that. How does that affect us? It affects us by being able to do our job better. Maybe we don't need as many agents, or maybe the agents can get to some of those families quicker so that kid doesn't have to go to an out-of-home placement facility that costs, $700 a day.
Did that bill go anywhere or did it get stuck?
It got stuck with everything else that got stuck last year. They couldn't even pass a bonding bill last year.
Yeah. And the PILT was big last year too. There was we supported a study and we're involved with a study for the PILT because it's supposed to be payment in lieu of taxes, like if somebody's living on the land and the state wants to hold that land, but we're getting nothing. And down in the cities, there's small tracts, they're getting like $5,000 an acre for it. And we're getting $1, so that they have that in front of them and all the data. It was a big study and we thought it was going to get through last year. It didn't. And then we also had the probation. We're pushing hard on probation and I'm on a work group down at AMC and I think that might happen this year. So, and then hopefully the county program aid will come back up too, but we're down there pounding on them all.
The other thing that hasn't shown up in here is one of our big goals for several years is broadband development. And in this last year, about $15.5 million has been awarded to firms in Pine County to build out broadband fiber optic cable to people's homes. East Central Energy just had an announcement today that they're gonna do 3 townships, 2.5 townships in southern Pine County in their first round of grants that they got. So yeah, we're making some progress, but it's long, I've been working on that broadband stuff for 15 years and it doesn't happen overnight.
One more thing about PILT, I think, can correct me if I'm wrong. The reason that it stays in PILT is so then if the DNR wants it someday, we're holding it for them. Is that accurate to say that?
No,
No.
the state owns land.
Yeah.
So
A
we
lot of
approve
it's
that,
granted.
but we own land, but what happened, well, it's better, but we tried to sell land. 600 and some acres a couple years ago and the DNR said, no, can't sell that. So they wouldn't let us sell county land when we had it blocked. So it's a,
So the reason we ended up with the Maggie Forest, some of those, the Shangwatana Forest, it went tax forfeit.
right.
We weren't the only county in the state. The county stepped in and said, we'll take over management of that land for you. And so they did. And in lieu of managing that land, they made payments to us, to each county across the state to help with the infrastructure that needs to happen. The sheriff's office has to go out there and find some lost hunter, and
But
somebody gets hurt in an ATV accident. We gotta go out there and do stuff, we got roads that have to get to the forest. So that's why they pay us this money. But it originally was all, if you go out in Shangwatana, you'll see an old road, and look on a very old plat book, you'll see private ownership that was out there, and it all went tax forfeit.
the formula is really old. It's really old. It was done way back when. The payment formula is old.
Yeah, the payment formula is just way old. Any questions on the budget? We still have some staff, if you have questions on your valuation of your land. That's where most people, please go down and talk to assessors, and they're more than happy to talk to you. If you feel yours is valued wrong, they'll come out and look at it. I mean, again, so, the other thing I'll say is there is a lot of programs I didn't know about, and I found out about. I happen to own some wooded land, and somebody said, hey, did you know that you can get, you can enroll that in sustainable forest, and they'll help pay the taxes on that? I go, huh, that'd be cool. So you hire a private forester, and he comes out and he makes a forestry plan. It's got great recommendations what you might do. And guess what? Most of the taxes on that piece of land get paid for out of some state renewable resource money. Yeah.
On our tax statement,
Yep.
we have the city, in my case, the
Yep.
city, county, and the school district.
Yep.
That's all explained out there pretty nice. And then near the bottom of that tax statement, it says HRA.
Yep.
And then it says ECRDC. I'm saying that number, the letter's wrong. What are those two things?
Okay. Yeah.
So the HRA, you must be in the city of Pine City.
Yep,
Yep. So the city of Pine City has a housing redevelopment
okay.
authority, and they
Yep.
have a specific levy,
But doesn't the county have one also?
right? But ours doesn't levy anything.
Oh, okay, so that's where I was getting. I did
Yes.
not. And ECRDC is East Central Region.
Regional Development Commission.
Yep, that's the dump.
Yep. No, that's not the dump.
No, I'm sorry, you're right,
No.
you're right. That's another.
Yep.
Line, yeah, thank you. Appreciate all the information.
Well, thanks for coming.
And your patience. I just have one thing I would like to say to the folks who are yakking about talking to the representatives and the senators here. I've always enjoyed, no matter where they were from, visiting with them folks. My problem has been with the leadership naming the governor and his group. That's harder to get a hold of. And I would suggest if you got something to say it to them. Because our folks I think they're doing the best job they can, but they're outnumbered.
Yep. If there's no other questions about the budget, you can stick around. I'll be willing to talk to you all night long, but we will quit the meeting. And so anybody got any budget specific questions? If not,